On today's Ask Zac, we're going to have some Telecaster tips. I'm going to talk about some string stretching things, reasons why it might not be a bad idea to use one of these. Maybe not when you're playing. And also going to do a little bit of a book review. So, all right. Well, hello friends and welcome to Ask Zac. Hope you're doing well. Today we're going to do kind of like some Telecaster tips, kind of some things that have kind of come up, and they're kind of like, it's a bit of a gumbo kind of episode. Just going to pass on a couple of tips that I think are important that maybe you ought to check out. And I'm going to do a little bit of a book review, and then also I'm going to talk about two builders that I really like a lot. So, all right. So before we dive in, a little pause for the cause. I need to thank my Patreon members that are really what keeps this show going. If you want to learn more about that, there's a link in the description. Also, I'm proud and happy to say that I have a new merch provider, and they are already shipping stuff. They are on the ball. They're doing a great job. So this is one of the new It's a Sickness shirt. Also, I have the amp schematic is now on a coffee mug. So you might want to check that out. All right. Enough of that. Let's dive in. So first off, I wanted to talk about something that I learned recently. I was at Joe Glazer's shop, and there's always a lot to learn there from all the guys down there. And I was watching Nick Drushel as he was stretching strings, and I noticed something weird. It's like he would take the string out of the nut, and then he would stretch it, like you normally would. And I asked him, I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I take the string out of the nut when I'm stretching it because otherwise, especially, it's really bad on the wound strings, you're basically sawing the string back and forth." Now, I know what some of y'all are thinking. I was like, well, when you bend strings, it's doing that. Well, not to the degree, because when you stretch strings, you're pulling the string and releasing the string in a much more exaggerated way than you would bending, unless maybe you're Steve Ray Vaughan or you're doing, 2 whole step bends all the time. But basically, this is a way of making the nut last longer without the slots getting too deep from you, constantly sawing the string back and forth in the bottom of the nut. So it's real easy to do. You just, like I just did, you can just pull it out of the nut slot, give it some tugs, and it works well. All right. Now for our next Telecaster tip. So I was recently, this is another, kind of happenstance kind of meeting thing. I was hanging out with JD Simo, and he wanted to show me this new Blackguard, I think it was a Nacho guitar that he had gotten, and he pulled it out of the gig bag, and this is not a Nacho, but anyway, he pulled it out like this, and immediately I said, I thought, he'd just gotten the guitar and, he was, trying to be cool or something like that. I was like, why do you have the cover on there? And I was expecting him to say, well, it came with the guitar. I just got it or whatever. He said, no, this protects the saddles. I said, What? He said, yeah, I learned it from Red Volkart. He said, Red uses a gig bag all the time. JD, I mean, a lot of people use gig bags all the time. And so Red's reasoning was that when you have the guitar in a gig bag, what you're getting is, no matter what, you're going to have some stuff hit against the gig bag and ended up hitting against the guitar. And so what ends up happening is you are, hitting the strings into the saddles. And so when you're talking about a blackguard type guitar with brass saddles, then it starts to become maybe a little bit more significant than maybe even steel or some other kind of material. So to protect both the saddles and the strings, because also as those strings are getting jammed into the saddles, it damages the strings too. So Red would, use the cover like that. And so he would leave the cover on during transport in the gig bag. And then, of course, you take it off, put it on your amp. You don't have to smoke in it. You don't have to, put your, cigarette ashes in there or anything like that. And then, then you put it back on there, put it back in your old gig bag, and you're good to go. So I thought that was a fun tip. So, of course, this is going to mainly apply to guys that have, the vintage style, bridge on here, but just kind of an idea, and also something I hadn't thought about, because I've seen people put neck, like fret protectors and string, where basically it's a piece of plastic that protects the frets and the strings from being hit against each other in a case or in a gig bag. But I hadn't thought about that aspect. So, interesting. All right. Now, I wanted to do a little bit of a book review. I think, I did that for a while and then I've kind of gotten away from it. And so this is something I read recently, and it really kind of brought home how important Emmylou Harris is to my musical kind of upbringing and the things that I like. And, of course, I recently did an episode about how Eric Clapton, his Just One Night album got me into Albert Lee. And my entry drug was kind of Clapton and Albert Lee, but it was finding the Emmylou Harris albums that Albert played on. That's what got me into all these other acts. And so this book is called In-Law Country. It's by Geoffrey Himes. And it's him taking a look at this whole movement that was with Emmylou Harris in the center, and then all of these kind of husbands and wives. So it's kind of a play off of Outlaw Country, like Willie and Waylon and those guys. But this is In-Law Country, where you have all these people that were interrelated or married. So you have Emmylou, who was married to her producer, Brian Ahern, at that time period. You have Rodney Crowell, that at the time was married to Roseanne Cash. You have Ricky Skaggs, that's still married to Sharon White of the Whites. And all these people were all performing together. And you also had, he wrote Heartbroke. And Guy Clark. Yeah, Guy and Susanna Clark. Susanna Clark, of course, wrote Easy From Now On and a number of really great songs and was a great painter. So all these guys and gals were together, and they were all creating, and all of that music really impacted me a lot. So I really enjoyed this book. I think it's a great book. It's not really deep on the guitar side of things, even though they do talk about Albert Lee and James Burton and even Ray Flack when they're talking about Ricky Skaggs. But it's just, good stories and a great way of connecting the dots between all these characters and just the relationships that were involved. I do have a small beef in that Geoffrey was talking about Ricky Skaggs' Live from London album, and he talks about the song Cajun Moon having also been recorded by J.J. Cale. But unfortunately, those are two very different songs one was written by Jim Rushing for Ricky Skaggs, and the other one was written by J.J. Cale, and J.J. Cale recorded it. I mean, that's one of J.J. Cale's best best tunes is Cajun Moon. And it's a very different one from the one Ricky Skaggs recorded in the mid-'80s. So, just a small little quibble there, but a fun book. And, yeah. Finally, I wanted to talk about two makers that are friends of mine that I just really love their stuff. And I don't just love their I don't just love what they do. It's that whenever I've bought stuff from them, it's always been ready to play, ready to gig immediately. There was never anything that I was like, oh, I want to change this out or do this or whatever. And it's so rare to just have something that shows up. I mean, you can do that maybe with a pedal or something like that. But with guitars and amps, it's so rare when something shows up and you're like, that's perfect. I don't want to do anything to it. Now, I will admit here that there is some fun in the tweaking and hot rodding, but this is my Danocaster that I got probably 2 years ago. And of course, I've had a couple Danocasters through the years. And this one's by far my favorite and the one that I've used the most. And this guitar, I haven't changed a thing on it. Not one thing. The only thing I've changed are the strings. And this is just a stellar guitar. And, I love the everything, the color, the pick guard. At one point, I thought about changing the pick guard. I put another on there, and I was like, this is stupid. And I immediately put it back on there. I even love this 8 screw single ply guard. And, it's like the rudders, knobs, the buds pickups, everything about this guitar is great. And Dan is a great friend. He and I go to lunch probably every other week. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to old Dan, who just continues to make stellar guitars and make stuff that you can just get out of the gig bag and you can go gig with it. And it's great. And the partner with this guitar is my Headstrong amp. So I bought this Headstrong amp a couple of years ago, and again, I bought it. And the reason I got it was because I'd gone to J.D. Simo's house, and he had one, and I played through it, and I said, that's perfect. And so I immediately called up Wayne at Headstrong and bought it. And I have used this amp pretty much every day, and it was perfect right out of the box. And I've never seen an amp show up packed better. I mean, I know that's kind of a ridiculous thing to praise, but yet for something to show up and it's just packed impeccably. And the only thing I've done on that is change the tubes in it. And I've only had to change the tubes once. And I've used it on tons of gigs and pretty much every Ask Zac over the last couple of years. And I'm, I am grateful for guys that really, put their heart and soul into stuff and make killer gear that you can just get out of the bag, get out of the box, set it up and play it. So, all right, guys. Well, I appreciate you watching today. I hope you enjoyed these little tips, a little bit of the book review, and thanks again. Bye-bye.